All right, if I can just take you through a small 2-minute grounding. Let's find our feet on the floor. Sense if your back is straight. If you're comfortable, you can close your eyes or just lower your gaze and bring your attention to your breathing. And just notice, just become aware of how you're breathing today. How fast or slow you're breathing. How deep or shallow your breathing may be. We are just noticing. And now let's synchronize our breathing. And in that way, we connect with each other. We align with each other. Let's breathe in and breathe out. We breathe in and let go. One more time, breathing in and releasing. Come back to normal breathing. And let's connect with the divine. Let's say a small prayer silently in our own words, asking for some guidance, for some protection, and to be shown the way. Slowly come back to your breathing. Become aware of the space around you. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. Okay, welcome everyone. So this is the first of 6 webinars that I'm offering on different topics connected to Indic wisdom, Vedic astrology being one of them. So today's topic is on what a birth chart can tell us. Yeah, it's like the foundation topic for me. Why do we go to astrology, right? That becomes the starting point. When do we go to astrology? Or when do we visit an astrologer? Yeah, I have a deck. I'm going to share this with you. All right, let me share my screen. Now, this is not about learning astrology. That we'll do it at another time. It's a more philosophical topic, yeah, on when do we consult the birth chart? Why should we consult the birth chart, right? Slightly on the philosophical side, yeah. But I know there are people who are studying, so I'll also give you a few things that you can take away for your own learning later. Yeah? Let me share my screen. So you should be seeing my screen. Yeah, all right. So what a birth chart can teach us about ourselves, right? The first question in all of this for me, it's actually, why do we come to astrology? So before I share my views, I'd like to see your thoughts. I'll give you a few things that most of my clients come to me for, right? A few questions. And I'd like to see if this is some reasons why you may have gone to an astrologer, right? One of the most common questions I get is, when will I get a job? Yeah. How will my marriage be? Yeah. When will I get a promotion? Very common questions that I get. Another very common one is, when will my daughter get married? Somehow it is not about sun. In this culture, in my context, it is more about when will my daughter get married? Another very common question, when will my bad period end? Especially where Indian Vedic astrology is concerned, we have something called periods. So this is very commonly asked, when will my bad period end? Sometimes it's about health. When will my health improve? Can you go back to the first time you went to an astrologer or you consulted your own birth chart? And can you see if it was any of these questions? This is what we can broadly describe as an event in life, right? Finding a job, it's an event, right? Something that's happening in my external world. When will my daughter get married? It's a marriage. It's something that's happening in this world around me. Yeah. So I think we need to step back a little bit and ask the question, when does an event take place? Leave astrology aside, right? When does an event take place? And it takes me back to something that Patanjali has called as vasanas, right? It comes from yogic psychology. A loose translation is very strong inner tendencies. Yeah, vasanas. These vasanas, these tendencies in us, creates certain thoughts, emotions. I see things a certain way because of my tendency. The same object, when I see it, I perceive it differently from others because our inner tendencies, the vasanas, are different. These are what Patanjali calls as vrittis, right? The way it's usually translated is disturbances, but we can keep that aside. Thoughts, emotions, the way I perceive reality is vrittis related to my vasanas. These thoughts lead to certain speech and action, right? Which is known as the karma in the world around. So look at the chain over here. The tendencies, my tendencies, which make me have certain thoughts, lead to certain actions in the outer world or even inner world, right? Depends on if we want to classify thoughts also as karma. But the thing is, we live in a society with other people who have their own tendencies, their own vasanas, which means they have their own emotions, perceptions, and thoughts, which means they have their own actions. It is when these two come together that an event forms in the outer world. I want to pause over here because this is a very important chain where astrology is concerned. Before I tell you the link from this chain and astrology, can we just reflect on this? Can we pick an event in the recent past and see if we can trace it back to a tendency? Let's say, for instance, an event in the recent past, I could not sleep well at night. How can we trace that back to a tendency? In my own case, a tendency to consume information. So I end up reading the news late in the night, my mind gets agitated, activated, leading to lack of sleep. The tendency, right? We need to trace it back. How are the others with this? Are you able to connect an event to a tendency? Are you able to see the difference between an event and your tendencies? Anil?
Yeah, many. So, yeah, if I was to take a very simple example, yeah, I tell myself that, look, I, uh, so I have this tendency to sometimes postpone things.
Mm.
And that comes from the space of, okay, I've taken care of what was on the calendar, the main things. Then
Mm.
let me see a movie or something, and I'll come back to other things which are
Mm.
not urgent.
Mm.
I
Mm.
recognize that it has consequences, but
Mm.
this tendency and the
Mm.
thought and emotion that comes, that enough for today, and then the
Mm.
action is a
Mm.
pattern that uh, I'm seeking to break.
Thank you. So, how does this connect to astrology? The thing is, when we ask questions on when will my health improve, or when will I get a promotion, or when will I find a job, we are speaking about the observable events in the outer world. Yeah. But I think that the birth chart tells us about our tendencies. Yeah. Events in the outer world require other people's charts also, right? But when we go to an astrologer, we are showing just our chart. We don't show the chart of other people who have applied for the same job. We don't show the chart of the HR person who's recruiting the person, right? So we are a little back in the chain. We are at tendencies at birth, not even tendencies of today. Nandini, but don't tendencies change over time? Exactly my point. That is why over here, I've put the birth chart for me shows tendencies at birth. 40 years ago, 50 years ago. Yeah. Example, for those of us who are studying astrology, if we look at Mars, it shows tendencies for courage and initiative and anger and impatience at birth, right? Saturn shows about discipline and patience and responsibility. These are traits associated with this graha, with this planet. Mercury shows about communication and how I rationally make decisions, the logic I use while making decisions. But we need to approach this as vasanas, probabilities, tendencies, predispositions, rather than an event, because that is a little further down the chain. The birth chart is like taking a photograph of the sky, yeah, at a certain moment in time. So at that moment in time, what was the prevailing tendencies? What was the energy of the moment is what we are capturing in that photograph. So if we keep this in mind, can we ask a different question from the birth chart? Instead of asking what will happen in the outer world or when will something happen, Can I instead ask, why am I like this? Why does something affect me more than others? Why do the same things keep repeating over and over again? What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? So you see, I'm trying to approach the birth chart as though it was a mirror, which is reflecting back to me my vasanas, my tendencies. The thing is, we need to break that chain, right? Vasanas, tendencies, which lead to certain thoughts and emotions, which lead to certain actions. I need to break that chain. And that is what the birth chart helps me with, provided I want to break it. There are not all cases where I want to break it, right? I need to be a little, I need to discern, I need to choose which vasanas I want to change. But these questions are super important for me. So let's take one of them. What comes naturally to me? Many times I get my clients, they are not, they don't believe that they have certain strengths, because it is so natural for them. They're like, everybody is like this. It is not unique to me. Everybody is like this. No, every birth chart is unique. Everybody has strengths. Sometimes they are so natural, we don't see them. For example, the ability to lead or the ability to adapt, the ability to feel. This is one of the strengths that most people don't realize that they have, that it's a strength, that they can feel. There are so many of us who cannot feel. So a question to the group, right? Can we become aware of our strengths? What comes naturally to you? What comes easily to you that others find hard? Can you put a word or two in the chat window? Perseverance, to be disciplined, right? Empathy, yeah. Intuition, common sense, yes, it's a strength. True. Reading the room, yeah. Connecting the dots, art. To accept, finding quick solutions. Beautiful. You see how all of these are tendencies. Everything that's in the chat window now, they are tendencies. Empathy, connecting the dots, art, to accept, to find quick solutions, they are tendencies. Vasanas, our inherent nature. Can feel other people's emotions, yeah. Just as our natural strengths are important, it is also important that I'm aware of my fears. Without knowing, it can take over. What are fears? Fears of rejection, fear of failure, fear of uncertainty in my finances, in my future, in my health, fear of losing control, fear of not being seen, fear of being alone, fear of finances, fear of losing people. Yeah. Are you aware of your fears? You know, if I can make a statement, we all have fears. We are either not fully conscious of our fears. Okay, let me revise my statement. The vast majority of us have fears. The vast majority. Yeah. Now, this was the second one, right? What am I afraid of? Third important question is, what keeps repeating in my life? Because if I don't take conscious action on my tendencies, it's going to keep repeating. Because I've not addressed the root cause of what I'm going through. I may change the job, but I'm still not happy. I may get a promotion, but I'm still, I don't have enough. I need more. Right? So can we see the tendency? Can we see the pattern? I'll give you an example here, right? We'll take a real case, right, from one of my clients. So she came to me saying there's more and more work for her. Yeah. She is not able to delegate, and work is just piling up more and more. The more she does, the more she gets. And I alerted to her that it's the same thing that's happening even in relationships. It's not just in career, even though it was a career related question, we saw the same thing happening in relationships as well. Overgiving, rarely asking for help, trying to manage multiple things at home, at work. And the challenge was heading to a burnout, right? Wanting to drop the job, wanting to drop everything and run away. She was almost heading towards that. What the chart showed was that Saturn had become active. Saturn is a planet of duty and responsibility. So this person was taking on more and more out of an obligation, out of a feeling of not doing enough. That's what I'm calling as the tendency. The tendency to do more and more, the tendency to take on more work. Saturn is work. Karma, duty, responsibility is Saturn. Now, because I'm addressing it at a tendency level, I need to provide an action item at the tendency level, not at the event level. Right? I can't tell her change job because then I'm addressing the event. The tendency for Saturn is to slow down. So there itself you change, you flip. Saturn is causing all this, whatever it is, you change the tendency there and you say, can you pause? Can you delay it? Can you slow down? Can you learn to say no? Can you pause? Can you breathe before you take on something? We are trying to create that pause. Do you see how we are trying to change the tendency, the nature of the person? Now, the question will be, when will I be able to hire someone So then I can delegate. But the tendency is not to delegate. So even if she hires someone, she does not have that in her nature to delegate. That needs to be built. Yeah. Let's take one more question. And this is what is important for me. What is my destination? For me, the birth chart is like Google Maps. It's going to show you how to get to a certain destination. It's going to tell you, look, if you take MG Road, you're going to get blocked in traffic. It's going to be red. Take this route, you'll reach faster. It's just giving you a map. Yeah. What is my destination? We can use the birth chart to find our destination, but we can also reflect. Here are some destinations. Security, right? It's almost the opposite of fears. To be loved, to be seen, to belong, to be free, to know, to learn, to find meaning, to find purpose. These are what I call as destinations, goals. Understanding, knowing my goal will not take me there. Understanding is not transformation. The birth chart can help you find your goals. It can show you your tendencies, or if you believe it will show you the events, okay, the birth chart will show you the event, but it will not change your life. Knowing about Saturn will not create more structure and discipline in me. Learning about Mars will not make me more less angry. Yeah. To put it in our day-to-day language, we need to take the medicine that a doctor prescribes, right? That responsibility lies on us. Hmm? Have you known something about yourself but not acted upon it? That is what we are trying to address here. We know something, but then we don't use it. We don't take action about it, on it. Kanika, any thoughts on this question?
There may be many things, but I can't really just think of one in particular. But I think that, yes, I've always known that I'm meant to really do something with mass market and transformation, but I've not done that yet. Like, so that's something that I know that impact and influencing, but I have not done that at that scale yet. I don't know.
Nice.
Yeah, that comes.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. I know I overwork and I'm not able to slow down, right? It becomes, kind of a train, a moving train, and to change tracks, it takes a lot of effort to slow down this train and move it into a different track. Tendency to want too much than I can handle. Beautiful observation. So, just to summarize this a little bit, the questions that I think are worth asking is, what comes naturally to me? What am I afraid of? What keeps repeating? What am I being asked to learn? What is my purpose, or what is my destination? And if I can invite you to choose one question for yourself, right? You don't need to answer it, but see which of these is most important for you at this time. This is what we've been sitting with, right, all this while. But the real question is, what happens on Monday? Right? What do I do with all this knowledge? Right? All nice philosophy. Okay. What do I do with it? Okay. Let's take this up. Let's rewind back to the very first slide. Yeah. What I shared was vasanas or tendencies, which leads to thoughts, emotions, perceptions, which leads to certain actions in the outer world that we call as karma. This was the chain that I laid out. Becoming aware, either through reflection, through therapy sessions, through journaling, or through the birth chart, becoming aware, I break this cycle with sankalpa, with intention. The moment I bring in a conscious choice, a conscious action based on awareness, I can have a different speech. I have different action and create different karma. Or maybe, the ideal is I don't create karma, but I've not figured that one out as yet. So we'll take that maybe in a few decades. Yeah. For now, we just try to change our tendencies, which leads to me not shouting at the waiter. The moment I'm aware, I'm already, alert to the triggers. And the birth chart helps me with that, helps me find my triggers, helps me come up with a different way to respond to a situation. So my invitation from this, whatever past 45 minutes that we've been interacting, can we find one strength and lean more into it? Can we become aware of one fear before it completely takes over our life? Can we recognize one pattern and break it before it's too late? Or can we find goal to move forward with? Astrology is only a tool. You can keep this tool aside. The important thing is to break that cycle. Vasana, vritti, karma cycle has to be broken. However you do it. So if you have your journals or if you have your phones, can you note down one thing that you'll do differently this week? I know that some of us are studying astrology. So how do we do this from the birth chart? How do we find strengths from the birth chart or fears from the birth chart? Right? What comes naturally to me? I would generally look at the ascendant lord, sun, moon, and the strong planets, in Shadbala, which are the strong planets. What am I afraid of? I would look at the 8th house. I would look at Saturn and Ketu and see how that is connected to the moon. What keeps repeating in my life? I would look at dashas. I would look at the dushthanas, 6, 8, and 12. I would look at Rahu Ketu axis. What am I being asked to learn? I would look at the 9th house, the house of dharma. I would look at difficult yogas, challenging placements. What is my purpose? That was one of the questions. What is my destination? I would look at Atma Karaka. I would look at the 10th house. But the thing is, you don't need to memorize all this. Yeah. You need to learn to derive it. Yeah. Given a question, you should know which planets, signs, and houses to look at. Or if you're more familiar, which divisional charts, which nakshatras to look at, right? If that is something that you're interested in, you can learn, right? You can learn with me. My new program is starting in January, and it's going to be a 2-year program. And we look at 4 pillars: astrology, astronomy, Indian philosophy, and Vedic mythology. We need to find a better word than mythology. I don't have another word. Maybe Puranas would be the word we should use, right? Stories of ancient times. Yeah. Now, these are online classes, and we also have in-person retreats. It's the focus of this 2 years is to learn to read your own chart. And now there's also a certification option available. Yeah, you get a postgraduate diploma with this 2-year journey. And we start in January. If you want to learn to read your own chart. The other option is consultations. When you go to an astrologer, see if you can address the innate tendencies in your nature. I feel that is far more powerful than addressing the event, because the pattern will continue otherwise. But there are a few more webinars coming up, so you can also explore this topic through webinars and my YouTube channel. This is what I had planned for today. I want to open up the space for questions, any thoughts.
Can I ask one?
Yes, Meeta.
So I've seen astrologers. In fact, I have visited astrologers who they don't talk the way you talk. They
Sorry, you
just
got
give you
cut.
a.
Can you repeat that last sentence, please?
I've gone to astrologers and like during a very low phase of my life. So, but all she would give me is remedies, remedies, remedies. She never addressed the tendency. She never addressed anything. She would just give me a long list of remedies, and she would say, do this and it'll be fine. That point of time in life, I didn't have any other really going through a very hard time. So I would keep doing those remedies. I don't know whether it worked. I don't know whether it didn't work. Yes, it did. There was a placebo effect. I knew I was doing something to correct things in my life. But what is your take on these remedies? Because after that, I just stopped going to astrologers. I just stopped because I spent so much of money, some gems, some remedies, and it would just keep on costing more money, more money, more.
Yeah.
I really don't know if it worked as in that same proportion of the expenditure.
Yeah. So, the traditional astrologers, the remedies that they give, remedy is the word used when we study classical Vedic astrology. It's more on rituals, mantra, gemstones, visiting temples, or maybe fasting on certain days, repeating a mantra, right? The word I use instead of remedies is strategy. What is the strategy to address this now, right? What is the strategy? Now, the where I focus is lifestyle changes, right? For instance, it's an example I give all the time. Many of you would have heard it. If my client is in Norway, I can't ask her to go to a Kali temple. Doesn't work. There's no Kali temple in Norway. So I need to find a remedy that suits her lifestyle. Not just that, it needs to suit her age in life. If it's a teenager, it's a completely different story than if it's an adult, than a senior adult. Very different, right? We cannot have a one remedy fits all approach. For the same planet, for the same combination, depending on the culture, depending on the age, it needs to change. Yeah. But also you can ask, what are you trying to remedy? Are you trying to remedy the outer world? Or are we trying to remedy our vasanas, our inner world?
That was never addressed. Always rituals and remedies, and which did not resonate with me at that point in life also, but then I did it. Yeah, there would be always conflict in the house because I would tell my child to do something, I would tell my husband to do something, and all the gods were like confused. I mean, they were confused about which god am I talking about. Some gods I got introduced to while I was doing the remedies. So post that, everybody has become so averse to getting their birth charts read. Yes, I also was paranoid.
You know, the majority, maybe 90% of people I interact with have a trauma with astrologers. Yeah. Yeah. So, Meeta, I don't know if I have a clear answer for you. It's
I
just
get it, but the way you said it today and the way you put it today made a lot of sense because it involves a lot of self-work. Also, it involves reflection, contemplation,
there you go.
A deeper understanding of self. And it sounds more doable than just rituals. So I'm not averse to rituals, but then there was no reason, there was no explanation for that. So this, when you reflect and when you understand your tendencies and then you break patterns, is something which resonates more for my being a psychotherapist. It definitely resonates more too. More. And it makes sense also. Thank you.
Right. And the chart is a tool to understand and break that pattern, right? So, yeah, we just have to treat it as a tool, tool for self-growth. Peter, even if you change the tendency, you won't change the outcome, right? Yeah. So over here, it is about self-growth. Yeah. And the belief is, if I change my tendency, my action will change. Let's say, for instance, I have a tendency to drink. Yeah. You put a beer bottle, I'm going to have it. Yeah. Picking up that beer bottle is the action. Yeah. But it's coming from a tendency of wanting to get high. Yeah. Now, if I break the tendency, are you saying I will still pick up the bottle? Maybe I'll pick up the bottle with more awareness. The first step to completely changing the course of actions, right? If I become aware of my tendency and I break my tendency to drink, why will I drink? Why will I get consumed with alcohol? I don't know. Philosophical question. I'm open to hearing your thoughts on this. Self-growth, no? The intention of the Vedas is to realize the highest goal. Of the Yoga Sutras is to break that chain to remove the vrittis in my mind. That's the goal of the way of the sutras, the Yoga Sutras. Or is it? Anil, you want to tell me briefly if that is the goal of the Yoga Sutras?
Absolutely. Chitta Vritti Nirodha, channelizing the activities of the mind.
Yeah. Peter?
Thank you very much. So my point is that yes, you will work on the inner self, so your body, your emotions, your thoughts, and to the level of the action, you can go till there. But the outcome, suppose you are working so hard for a financial gain, and you do all the four, you work all the four, and you do it exactly right, but it's not meant for you to get what you want. You still will have a result that is conflicting to your expectation, and you will also be, you know the sequence of a reaction within the person. So this is my point, that you will control till the level of individual. Beyond that, it's beyond you, and that was my point.
Yeah, fair point, right? We should do what we can and leave the rest to him or her, right? We leave it, right? We do our bit. Fair point. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And exactly, Swati, this is about free will. That's exactly my point. And somehow I've not used that word in this deck. It's free will, right? By becoming aware, that word sankalpa that I used is where free will enters the chain. Consciously, I choose a different way of doing things. If that awareness is not there, then the chain continues, right? Tendencies lead to thoughts, and emotion leads to action, which again strengthens my tendency. Again, same thoughts and emotions, even more drastic action, right? That chain keeps getting strengthened. And free will, yeah, this can be another topic, fate and free will, another very important topic for astrology. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. How are we doing? Shall we pause at that for today? Any questions that are very important to address? Misha, some planetary energies in contact with each other are termed bad. But why would something bad occur? Exactly. There was to be a reason. Then simply naming person mad. Maybe energies that make someone rebellious are also required. So let's not use the word good and bad, right? Let's use the word lessons to learn. The planets are not bad. I can categorically say that the planets are not bad. You know why I can say that? Because Parasharas associated each planet with an avatar of Vishnu. How can I call an avatar of Vishnu as bad? Each graha is associated with an avatar. Saturn associated with Kurma avatar. Are we saying Kurma avatar is bad? No. Something is wrong with the way we have understood Kurma avatar. Manisha?
Vikram, you said that instead of breaking the pattern, right? The tendency. So instead of breaking the tendency, the example you shared about consuming alcohol. So if I feel high when I consume alcohol, can I get that high feeling with some other thing? Like channel that energy of feeling high from some other activity? Will that be a
Great point.
strategy?
But there, what's happening is you are replacing one with another. The tendency is still there, right? For instance, I tell myself, don't scroll Instagram, don't scroll Instagram, don't scroll Instagram. Okay, I delete the app from my phone. You know what I do? I scroll news. The tendency is still there. I want to distract my mind. I want something meaningless to do. So I've replaced one with the other. But the nature, the character has not changed. And that is what I mean by repeating. The same thing will repeat. So if you replace alcohol with something else, that is still an addiction. So the birth chart, what it will help you with is to understand why do you need alcohol? Why do you need that addiction, right? So that is what we need to address. Not the external form. That's an external event. Picking up that bottle is an external event.
Thank you.
Okay, let's pause at that. Let's just breathe to bring this webinar to a close. When you're ready, you can open your eyes. Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vikram.
Vikram.
Thanks, Vikram. Bye-bye.
Thank you.